Good evening, everyone. Thank you for joining the NASW-NY C.A.R.E.S Community Engagement Initiative for the second event of the School Social Work Series, Becoming a School Social Worker 101, the application process. My name is Angelique Imani Rodriguez, and I'm the NASW-NY Manager of Membership Engagement and Special Programs. Registration for the remaining events of the NASW-NY C.A.R.E.S School Social Work Series is still open, a week-long series of events about school social work, including a CE opportunity. If you're looking for more CE workshops, we also offer a very robust CE schedule, and there's more on the horizon for the chapter. We hope you opted to add your email address to our email list. You can start receiving communications from us, including our weekly email digest, and every Wednesday that provides the latest and most current information from the chapter. Post-event, you'll receive any email that will share all of this information about what's upcoming, as well as any resources or information provided by tonight's presenter. Please remember that by registering for any NASW New York events, you agree to abide by the NASW New York anti-harassment policy, the link of which I will drop in the chat for all of you shortly. Before we begin tonight's event, we want to take a moment to acknowledge once again that NASW New York recently experienced a Zoom bombing incident during our free virtual C.A.R.E.S programming. We are actively communicating with our national office to implement stronger preventative and responsive protocols, as these types of disruptions have unfortunately been on the rise across virtual platforms across the nation. While we're taking every precaution at the chapter, we do want to prepare you that should any incident occur today, it may involve hateful or emotionally distressing content. Please know that we are ready to immediately handle any incident should it occur tonight. Our mission remains to provide free and accessible NASW New York C.A.R.E.S community engagement programming to support New York social workers across the state with content that matters to them. However, if these disruptions begin to escalate, the chapter may need to reconsider the structure of these offerings, including the possibility of instituting attendance fees. So don't ruin it, bad apples. To better protect the integrity of these events, we appreciate your understanding and ongoing support of this programming. Once again, thank you all for your patience and for joining us this evening. If you have any questions about this event or any other community engagement events at the NASW New York chapter, I will drop my email in the chat for you shortly as well. Without further ado, let me introduce you to our illustrious presenter for the evening, Dr. Badillo-Diaz. Whenever you're ready. You're muted.
Thank you so much, Angelique, for this opportunity, and thank you, New York City. NASW's New York C.A.R.E.S. This is a great opportunity. I wish I was a part of something like this on my journey to become a school social worker years ago. So I did drop our slide deck in the chat. Feel free to bookmark, follow along. These are your resources. And I've been right here in your shoes trying to navigate the application process to be a school social worker in New York State. So I'll first just share a little bit about myself, my journey into social work, and my career in school social work, as it's an incredible, incredible career. I've also will be talking more explicitly about the application process and all the nitty-gritty of the different pieces that you need for your application to become a school social worker in New York State. And so I'm just going to pull up my slides here and just share a little bit about myself and my journey. So I come here from New York City. I've been a New York City school social worker for a number of years. I want to say from 2015, I've been part of the New York City school system. I'm currently an adjunct professor. I teach a postgraduate certificate program at NYU on school social work practice, where I teach a course on data and technology and AI for school social work practice. I also teach at Columbia and also at Louisiana State University. I'm at a couple of places doing just teaching at the MSW and doctorate level. I also have a consulting business. I do trainings on AI and social work practice and youth mental health. So I've had the privilege of training school social workers, school counselors across the country and also in Canada on how they're integrating AI into school social work practice. So what a time to be in this field with this technology integration. So I've been doing that. I also do research on the national level on school social work. I've looked at charter school social work practice for social workers, and also I am doing current research on AI and school social work practice integration. What's also exciting is I'm currently the NASW New York Secretary. I serve on the board, and I'm a former Northeastern rep of the School Social Work Association of America. So I'm currently right now doing work with the School Social Work Association of America. I serve on the Standards and Practice Committee and on the Research Committee. I'm very involved on the national level for school social work, and I'm really passionate about this practice. So, and I'm going to share you a bit about my journey into the social work field. So, just if you can, I know you've been sharing your name and location, but I would love to know your current role. Are you a student? Are you already in the field? And if you have a question for today's session, I want to make sure I'm covering exactly what folks are looking for. We will get to the nitty-gritty of the teach application, all the requirements, the different workshops that you have to complete for your application, but I just want to make sure that if you have any questions for today's session, and to make sure that I incorporate them in our conversation for today. All right, BSW student, welcome, Jada. That's awesome. Currently in school for MSW, full-time caseworker. Great. Also another BSW student. This is awesome. It's always great to see students up at Hunter. Yes, represent. It's great that you're here. All right. We also have dropping the link again in the chat. Absolutely. But it's great to see those who have recently graduated MSW students. So this is great as your journey into coming into school social work practice. So I just want to make sure I drop the chat, the link. Okay. So my journey into school social work was really because my first year placement when I was an MSW student was at a elementary school in the Bronx. So I know there's some Bronx folks here in the space, and that exposure to having that as my first year placement really opened up my eyes to the incredible just work that school social workers do. I have a brother who's on the spectrum, so I grew up in my household with individual education plans, speech therapists, OT therapists, my mom being the biggest advocate for my brother in the school system. So I don't think it's any accident to why I'm a social worker, but also why I led my journey into school social work specifically. So that exposure, my first year practicum, I served on the committee of social work education for our for the elementary school that I was in at the Bronx. I was doing counseling for students also at the school. I was attending staff meetings. I also was supporting with lunch duty and recess duty with all the kids. And I just fell in love with the profession of doing school social work. However, after I did my first year practicum, I was placed at a second year internship at a community mental health center, Northside Center for Child Development, also in New York City as well too. So, my journey there, I got a very clinical experience working with children and families here in New York City, and that was a really valuable experience. From there, I was able to obtain my LCSW, and that is really important to note because I didn't get my LCSW hours working in the school system. We're going to talk a little bit about the pros and cons, some of the challenges of getting your LCSW if you are looking to get that in a school setting. It is possible, but there's some other implications and sort of just steps that you may need to consider if you are looking to get your LCSW in a school setting. But prior to going into the school system in 2015, I worked as a as a clinical social worker, getting my hours. And so I sat for the exam in 2015 in February. And by June of 2015, I was hired by a charter school, a middle school charter school in New York City. So I worked a couple years as a middle school charter school social worker. I was doing clinical interventions. I was working with students individually and in groups in the middle school. I was doing some programming. I ran a peer mediation group for the middle schoolers, a whole program. I built community partnerships where I brought in the Jewish board to do grief bereavement groups with the students. I was very intricate as part of the crisis-based team. I was doing a lot of crisis assessment, both for suicide assessments and Also, for child abuse and neglect, we had a partnership with Mount Sinai as well, where we was doing a lot of work with Mount Sinai in our building to support our students, and also just like part of the school community. I would attend a lot of events, help out with their parent teacher night, parent workshops, and it was an incredible experience where I worked in the middle school. I also expanded my role to work in the elementary school as well for a couple years. During my time there, I was supervising social work interns who also came to work with me at the school. And there was also a bit of time where we didn't have a principal for 7 months. So I worked as the on the principal leadership team in that charter school for about 7 months. I was a really integral role with the dean as well as the school doing restorative justice practices and really changing our restorative justice discipline system in our school. So I held an incredible leadership role. I absolutely loved that work that I did in the middle school and really wanted to grow. So for my middle school and elementary school social work role, I then moved into another charter network where I served as the youth development director at an alternative high school in Brooklyn, New York, where I serviced students that were overage and undercredited. I was the administrator and supervisor of our school social workers, our school counselors, our student advisors, our restorative coach, and also our family coordinator, along with our attendance coordinator. So it was an incredible leadership opportunity to support with programming, social emotional learning programming. I was able to support with supervising and assisting with our community partnerships, as well as really supporting students to graduate. And this was also during COVID as well too. So there were lots of opportunities to really bridge that connection between the community and servicing our youth, along with the crisis services and supports. I did a lot of data management, reporting, charter network reporting, along with really just programming across the school to ensure that we had internships, post-secondary pathways for our students, along with the mental health and crisis supports. From my school administrative role, I then moved into the network at our charter network as well. So I did serve more of a community sort of role at the district level, where I was really overseeing social emotional programming across our two high schools and really supporting with social emotional programming, our program development, because we had a partnership with Urban Assembly. So that was also an incredible opportunity to really do more of a network sort of role. And then from there, I spent some time at the US Department of Education. I really then grew my role to serving under the President Biden's administration in the US Department of Education, doing a fellowship under Secretary Cardona, doing research across the country on the state of education post-COVID. It was an incredible journey and opportunity to not only travel across the country, meet with other educators, on the state of education, but also looking at grants and grants at a multi-million dollar level, looking at school violence and safety on those grant panels to look at other school districts and states who are looking to get funding from the national level. So I really come here to say, like, I've had such an incredible journey from direct practice to macro practice in school social work. And it is such an incredible field. And I'm really excited to see that all of you are here, really interested in this work, and there's so much to grow in. And as I mentioned, after my experience at the US Department of Education, now I do consulting in schools. I do trainings, I do clinical supervision in schools, and it's just been a great way to in the social work field, because again, it's there, everyone is your client. I'm going to talk a little bit more about what, sort of why school social work and why I've really spent majority of my career, about 10 years in school social work practice. And one, I really love this work because it really is grounded in promoting equity and access. You're an advocate for special education students. You're an advocate for students who are immigrants, who are undocumented. You're advocates for students who need not only academic support, but social emotional support as well. And you're also working with families to ensure that they're able to navigate many of the systems in the school district, but also community access and resources as well. I mean, you really are supporting the whole child. You're really supporting child development. I've had the privilege to work K through 12 of the school system, and it's been such a journey to really see not only children grow at all these different developmental stages and ages, and to really see them grow over time, which has been so incredible to see. You're really, as an advocate, integrating mental health into the schools. You're working in an interdisciplinary team. You are working with teachers, OT, speech therapists, school administration to really advocate for youth and do all that crisis work, connecting with the community resources, and also doing that mental health support in the schools as well with individual counseling and group counseling. And you're really strengthening that school family community partnerships. I did a lot of work. I mean, really, it's direct practice, it's community practice. You're really bridging community resources to your families, and families are coming to you for so many reasons for unhousing concerns, childcare needs, getting access to programs in case management. And the list is goes on of sort of this partnership that you are building with the school resources. And that's been a great way to support families. And you're always advancing and advocating for social justice. I mean, certainly now in the times of our current administration, you're supporting trans rights, disability rights, rights of undocumented immigrant families. This is just so integral in the work that we do and navigating this current administration. Just school social workers across the country are trying to navigate this, and it's just so grounded in our profession and so important in the work that we do. And so if you want to get more information on just our school social work model, what's exciting is that I was part of the board and part of the group that has put together this national model. And we just came out with an iteration, the 2.0, this year, a couple months ago. And it really sort of captures exactly what school social workers do. So if you're interested in knowing exactly what we do all the things, but we really support the student and the school well-being from the academics, school culture and climate, social emotional support, and mental health. And we really are that link between the school, community, and the home. And from just kind of zooming out, we really have a leadership role in schools. You are sometimes the only school social worker. I was the only school social worker for our middle school grades 5 to 8. I was one of two social workers from elementary school, right? K through 8. There isn't a lot of us on the team. We are tasked with doing all the things, but it's an incredible opportunity to have a leadership role. We're constantly advocating. We're constantly looking at policy, school policy, district policy, even more legislation and policy, how that's sort of impacting our role in the schools. And of course, we're looking at practice and doing research, whether that's evidence-based research or your practice wisdom of what's really working best for your school and your school community. And we're always grounded in equity, our code of ethics, which sometimes are really challenged in the school system because we are working in a host institution, right? This is not a social work agency. Mental health isn't always number one. You're really fortunate when you do have a school that really cares about social, emotional, mental health, that's not always the case. So we're constantly, advocating for our role and advocating for what we do. And even just psychoeducation of what we even do as school social workers. A lot of the times we don't have supervisors that are even social workers in the school system. You are very fortunate and lucky if you do have another social worker who even is an LCSW who is supervising you to provide that support. Oftentimes, our supervisors are principals, maybe it's the education coordinator. This is quite common, and they don't have a social work background. So there is a lot of psychoeducation that goes on and trying to navigate that. But as I mentioned earlier, if you are looking to get your clinical hours in a school setting, it's really important through your interview process to discuss that because not all schools can provide a clinical supervisor to support you in getting your clinical supervision hours. I was very fortunate in my charter network because I had my LCSW, I was able to provide that clinical supervision for other social workers in that space, but that's not always the case. So you definitely want to make sure, put a pin on it if you're a BSW student or MSW student, that is something really important to ask in your interview process because it's not always a guarantee. But I do want to drop in the chat this national model. I think this is really helpful as you're preparing for your interviews or wanting to know more about what school social work is. The School Social Work Association of America, they have tons of resources, information, professional development, and just information on what school social work is. And so I dropped that resource in the chat for you all. All right. Any questions? I'll take a quick pause here. Any questions on the national model on what school social work is before I dive into more of the nitty-gritty for New York State?
Nothing in the chat.
Awesome. All right. But if something comes up, please feel free to drop it. So now we're talking about specifically for New York State because every state varies in the pathway to becoming a school social worker. Like in the state of Missouri, there is no licensure requirement of getting an additional certificate. Other places like Illinois, there is absolutely a certificate and a pathway. And New York State is also one of those states as well. So we do have to have a school social work certificate if you're going to be applying for a role in the public school system. So that means if you're applying for New York City DOE, if you're applying for other public schools across New York State, you're going to be required to have the New York State Education Department School Social Work Certificate. Beforehand, you're going to already be required to have at least the licensed mental health social work, the LMSW licensure. So that's required across the board to have. And that is because when we do clinical counseling, IEP counseling in schools, we're required to have that licensure. Now, the sort of gray area in all this is charter schools. Charter schools function alongside the public school system. They just don't follow the exact, Department of Education rules and guidance. They still get public funding. It's still free for students to attend, but they operate outside the public school system. So not all charter schools require you to have the New York State Education certificate. And if you're going to be applying for schools like parochial schools, like Catholic schools or independent schools, they're not necessarily required. So one of the first things that you may consider if you're going to be applying for the public school system, you're definitely going to need the NASW School Social Work Certificate. If you're going to be applying for charter schools like myself, I was not required to have the NICED when I worked at Harlem Village Academy and when I worked for New Visions for Public Charter Schools. However, I still got my certificate because I always wanted the option to apply for the public schools, and I did put an application in for the New York City Department of Education. It just got never picked up to apply for to work in one of their schools. But in order to even apply for the New York City DOE, I had to have my application for the NICED School Social Work Certificate, which we'll be talking about over the next few slides. So the NICED School Social Work Licensure, let me make sure. So there's several requirements that you need to complete to do this application. So part of this application for the provisional license, there is the provisional, which is your first time applying. So we'll be covering this provisional certificate. As it looks like in the chat, majority of you are students, are graduating, and so you're looking to do the provisional certificate. There is, once you apply for your provisional certificate, to then get the permanent certificate, and that information is all on the TEACH website. However, for the provisional, we're going to be focusing on that because this is you all trying to become a licensed school social worker with that certificate in New York State. So what you're required to have is you're required to have a bachelor's degree. You're also required to have a graduate coursework, 30 semester hours in social work. You're also required to have a college supervised internship or graduate school supervised internship, which again, that's all covered when you have your MSW. You also need to require to have 3 workshops, and we're going to go into these more deeply, all of these requirements. You need to have the child abuse identification. You'll need to have the school violence intervention and prevention workshop, and you'll also need DASA, the Dignity for All Students Act workshop as well. And you will also need a fingerprint clearance. So all these are going to be required for your provisional certificate. So again, just kind of diving in more deeply into these requirements. All applicants, you must hold a bachelor's degree. Your bachelor's degree means that you have your 4-year, right, approved from a post-secondary institution. So BSW students, you're on your way just to make sure that you then get a master's degree. So your master's degree graduate coursework mean studies that can be accredited towards your graduate degree granted by an institution of higher education that's approved by the Commission of Education. Again, if you got your MSW in New York State, all that's going to be acceptable. Your graduate course, leading to a master's degree in social work is acceptable as well. So your internship, so again, this requirement refers to a structured, college supervised, post-secondary degree supervised practical experience for a student enrolled in a graduate program. So again, your MSW internship, right, that's required. You get 900 hours for your MSW degree. So that definitely can be used towards this internship requirement when you apply for the New York State Department of Education school social work certificate. So again, getting your MSW will definitely get you these requirements off the bat. So, if you graduated, you're mostly there. You will need, you will need to make sure that you have the MSW degree, the completion of 30 hours, and now we're going to go in the college supervised internship. And now we're going to go into those workshops that are required. So workshop number 1 is the child abuse identification workshop. Workshop number 2 that you need to complete is the school violence intervention and prevention workshop. And workshop number 3 is the Dignity for All Students Act. And I'm going to dive into more deeply what each of these are, the content that's covered, and the list of where you can find approved programs across the state where you can take those workshops. Okay, so child abuse workshop. So this is required that you get the mandated child abuse workshop for New York State. The law requires, right, mandated reporters that there is an updated training curriculum as of November 17th of this month. So there is more information on this on the NICED website. So I'm going to drop this in the chat. You may want to bookmark this as you're getting ready to apply for your certificate. And on here on the website as well, there's a list of child abuse identification and reporting providers. So you could just literally go through this list, but don't worry, I got a little bit of a cheat sheet for you here. There's actually a free training. So I've done this exact free training. And yes, you will need the licensure exam to get the provisional certificate. So thank you for asking that question. You will need the LMSW to work in the New York City and New York State public school system because your licensure is required to be able to do mandated counseling for students in the school system. So thank you for asking that question. So that link here that I dropped in the chat, this is where you can take this training for free. And you'll get a certificate for that. And that's what you're going to be uploading into your Teach application, which we'll talk about more in a few. Let's not pay for it. Let's do it for free. I literally did this exact training in April because it's also required for the New York State LMSW licensure as well. So 2 birds with 1 stone, right? Kind of thing that you can knock this out and you can get this training and it's for free and it's online and you could do it asynchronously. So I dropped it in the chat. This will definitely be required. If you don't want to take it online, I did include here the list of providers that you could take it at different places across the state. So that's also an option too as well. There's tons of option across the state. So is this up training that you have to do another round by next year? No. Once you get this training done, then you have it, unless there's going to be a new training that will be a couple years down the road. I did this training when I graduated with my MSW I want to say in 2011. So, and that was like part of my requirements. And that literally that certificate held all these years until New York State decided to do an update. The update was needed because post-COVID, there was so many other sort of child abuse and neglect training that we needed, especially doing this work remotely and online. And so now this certificate has been updated with more explicit training on how to look at child abuse and neglect with signs from doing counseling and social work services online. So I think that's the biggest sort of change that I saw in the training from when I did it, 10 years ago, but it withheld all these years my child abuse certificate. So we'll definitely be on the lookout. That's why it's great to be, again, just checking the New York State education, our certificate requirements with having your LMSW and your LCSW. Yeah. Yes, and Monica's correct. That was the same thing for me as well because I update my LCSW license every 3 years. It was required this upcoming round to have this new child abuse and reporting workshop completed. And like I said, I dropped the free one in the chat. The free one is also in the link here. So let's just do free, right? Free is better. Free is, saves us money. And this certificate could definitely apply for what you need if you want to get the New York State Education Department School Social Work Certificate to apply for the public school jobs as a school social worker. So the second workshop out of the three that you need to complete for your certificate is the school violence prevention workshop. So this workshop is also required for that school social work certificate, and it really focuses on school violence prevention. Unfortunately, we know across the country, school violence is here, it's on the rise. And so it's so important that we all do our part in not only identifying best practices, the risks, right, and how to respond to violent situations in schools, but also looking at classroom management techniques of how to contribute to a safe, nonviolent school climate and culture, understanding the policies and regulations around maintaining a school safe educational environment, and participating in effective school community just supports, right? So our role as school social workers, I mean, we're definitely part of the crisis support team. We are definitely working on doing, crisis assessments. We are part of the school climate, safety team often of the time because of our role that we look at both prevention and intervention and how we can positively support positive school climate. So this is about 3 to 6 hours to do this. And again, there's online options and in person. When I did this certificate, I did my certificate online, but there are in-person options that you can take. There is a cost associated with taking this program. Here's the link. The first one is the one that is online. So just that you know, so this one you could take online. The mandated reporting you could also take online. But here's also, if you want to take the program in person, here's the list of all the providers as we're here too. So there's lots of them. You want to just check out the organization website link, contact them for when they're offering the course. And typically a lot of these agencies are offering it throughout the year. So it's just best to kind of sign up for one that works best for you and a location that works best for you as well. But here's a list of the approved providers for the school violence prevention program workshop. So I'm going to drop that in the chat here as well. Does the new one have to be updated online? I'm assuming you're meaning the child abuse and neglect one. And the child abuse and neglect training, I mean, as of November 17th, everyone's requiring that training. And that one that I showed you, the one online, is the new training. I took that exact same training in April. I finished my certificate because, again, I was renewing for my LCSW. We were also required across the state as an LCSWs and LMSWs to have the new mandated reporter training. And you will need that exact training to apply for the school social work certificate program as well. I know there's the LCSW, LMSW, and the New York School Social Work certificate is separate from them. But again, this is where the overlap is of this mandated reporting training. So good to have. It's free, great to put on your resume, to also have that as well too, because we all are mandated reporters. All right, so the third workshop that you need is the DASA workshop, which is the Dignity for All Students Act. And again, this falls in line because remember what I said, as school social workers, we are part of mental health, crisis intervention. We're also there to support a positive school climate, meaning that kids feel safe coming to school. Feel like they have trusted adults. They feel like they're safe. There's rules, there's structure, there's predictability. Students and families feel connected to the school, and so that's part of our role. So this makes all sense while we have these different workshops. We're mandated reporters. We also work to have prevention of school violence and also the Dignity for All Students Act, which is a specific New York State law that's providing a safe and supportive school environment free from discrimination, harassment, and bullying and intimidation. This is part of the New York State Education School Social Work Certificate. Candidates must complete this state mandated training workshop. So when I did this workshop, I did this at Columbia University's Teachers College. I did it in person, and it was really important to not only know about this state policy, but again, in your work in schools, as part of my role as a school social worker, I was working with our dean, our restorative coach, to support with, bullying interventions. It was so important that when, bullying incidents occurred, that I also followed that product process and protocol to make sure that bullying is a that there's a whole protocol, that it's investigated, and that students, because it's part of students making sure that students feel safe in school. The schools themselves, I wasn't a part of this process, but we also have to every year report to the state the bullying incidences that happen and the investigation process. So this may not be your role as a school social worker, or most likely not, but the school has to report that because of the DASA, the Dignity for All Students Act. So this workshop familiarizes you with what the act is, understanding the issues that have to be addressed to race, color, weight, national origin, sex, gender orientation, right, identity and disability. You're going to be engaging activities and discussions reflecting on diversity, implicit bias, and social dynamics that contribute to harassment and bullying. What are the signs of bullying? How to intervene? How to assess? How to do those investigations? And really, it's equipping us as school professionals to identify, prevent, and intervene those incidents happening in the future. And unfortunately, we see this nationally, right? Unfortunately, these things hit the news, right? Incidents happen, a youth dying by suicide, or such a severe bullying incident, and the school is held liable and responsible, as we should be. It is our job as the adults in the school building to contribute and ensure that students have a safe environment. It's up to us to ensure that we do our due diligence of responding and intervening on incidents of bullying. We want to come from a trauma-informed lens. We want to develop and create trauma-informed schools. And so a law like this, a policy like this, is really important to be trained on as a school social worker. So here's also the list of providers for um, the school the DASA workshop. And here's a list of providers as well. Some of the universities, agencies will be offering the DASA workshop. It won't just be school social workers, it will be also other school personnel as well. Because some of these folks also need to take this workshop to get their certificate, whether, for administration and for, for other roles in the school too. So don't be alarmed. It's not just school social workers, it's other school staff that will be participating too. So again, you'll need to make sure that you complete those 3 workshops. And the last thing is fingerprinting. All candidates must be cleared by the New York State Education Department through a fingerprinting supported program. I think this is really obvious, right? Schools, we need to ensure that youth are safe. We can't have, staff who are putting youth at risk. So there's any history of child abuse, sexual abuse, criminal history, that has to go through, you're going to be fingerprinted, and that's just a requirement. So the fingerprinting process is through the office of OSPRA as well. A question that I often get, like, I've worked in child welfare. Can my fingerprints also be, used for the in conjunction or as a lieu to? So when in doubt, a great question to ask is just contacting OSPRA and getting that information. I know I did fingerprinting. I worked as a clinical mental health social worker in New York City. I was fingerprinted for the Office of Mental Health. My fingerprints did not carry over. I had to get fingerprinting through the New York State Department, and so that was just part of the process. Once you get your fingerprints, I believe they're good for a couple of years in the school system. So it's just really important. It's part of just compliance, prevention, and keeping our schools safe as part of the fingerprinting process. There is a cost. I believe it's 115. Don't quote me on it. It's been so, oh yeah, $101. It's right there. No, it's been some time since I've gotten my fingerprinting. I know I live in New York City, so there's sites in New York City that you can get fingerprinting, but there's also locations around the state. So this website's gonna be really important for the fingerprinting process. And so that is the information on the fingerprinting. And so resources and support, if you just need any resources and support of like any questions on those requirements, your best bet is always contacting straight to the source, the Office of Teaching Initiative Certificate Unit, the New York State Education Department. Here's their number, here's their email. When in doubt, contact them. I did the same thing when I was in my process of applying. I did the same thing when I was applying for my certificate. It's just always best. Some of you may have really nuanced cases, and I don't want to give any false or incorrect information. Just best to always contact the State Department. You can email them, you can call them. I've had my best luck calling them and getting a hold of somebody, and it's just easier, I think, just to talk with somebody over the phone. I did that through the LCSW, the LMSW. Just when in doubt, contact the source directly. But once you have all your components completed, you also want to create, and you could do this in tandem as well too, because as you're going through the process, you want to make sure that you upload your application. It will complete your application for the certificate through the Teach account. So everyone has to create a Teach account through the Teach system. And I'm going to drop the link in the chat as well. Uh, this is where we all go to create, if you're doing the provisional certificate, once you get your provisional, then you also will have to renew to get your permanent one as well, or choose not to. That's, totally option. You don't have to get the permanent if you're no longer continue working in the school system. But if you are continuing to work in the school system, you'll need to get your permanent certificate as well. So again, it's free to make an account into the Teach website. You want to enter your full name and information, your full name, date of birth, mailing address, email address. You have to confirm that. You'll also need to also include your social security number. You want to be able to create a username and create a strong password. And you're going to have security questions for account recovery. An activated email will be sent to your email address. Once you open this email address and activate your account, then you can log into the Teach application system to create new credentials. Once logged in, you're going to complete your profile, and then it's going to guide you through all the steps to submit your necessary documentation, schedule your fingerprinting, applying for certifications. So you do want to make sure that you set up your account as you're going as your first step as you're going through this process to make sure that you're completing all the steps and uploading that information. So it is mandatory when applying for the school social work certificate, you're doing it through the Teach account. This is very much separate from your LMSW, your LCSW. That is a very different process. This session doesn't cover the LMSW, the LCSW. This is just to get your New York State School Social Work certificate. To help you in this process too, I also have included here a YouTube video. Someone created a great video. to walk you through how to create an account in the Teach platform. So I definitely check it out. It's 15 minutes long. It's really kind of walks you through all the steps. At the end, you're just going to be creating a school social work certificate instead of I think it's for a teacher or administrator that they're creating their profile for, but you're following all the same steps until that last step that you're going to be doing. You're going to be following the school social work certificate. Okay. So to also to access the guidelines for the Teach application, you want to make sure that you're going to the school social workers part, because remember, all educators, school administrators, all these certificates are coming through the Teach, platform through the New York State Department of Education initiatives. So again, if you want to search for the requirements for this, when you go here, you're going to be looking at the other school surface, or let me just double check here. Okay, no. You're going to be looking under administration and school and pupil personnel services. So that's where you're going to find the first thing you're going to click from the drop down. Then you're going to drop to social work. Then you're going to select pre-K, to grades 12, so all grades, selecting a title, school social work. And here, again, if you want to look at the provisional certificate, your first renewal, second renewal, and the permanent certificate, we'll just quickly look at the provisional certificate because that's the first one that you're applying for. And everything that I covered here on the workshop is right here in the list as well. So this is just a great resource, just going straight to the source of the New York State Education Department of looking up the exact requirements. So I'm just going to drop that in the chat, bookmark, save that. But you're going to need the Teach application is where you're doing all of that work of uploading, following that process through, scheduling your fingerprint appointment is through the application process. Another helpful resource in your journey, because I know I shared a lot of content and information, is actually the New York State School Social Work Association. So I'm a part of the New York State School Social Work Association. I'm also part of the NASW. The New York State School
Oh no. Give us just a moment. Marina, you were frozen for just a sec.
Okay, that's what happened here. I was frozen. Okay, here we go. Here is the website for the New York State School Social Work Association. Just like the NASW, which is for all social workers in practice, there's a specific organization for school social workers. I belong to that organization as well. We provide a lot of resources for school social workers across New York State, and they have a whole resource on how to apply for the school social work certificate. So when in doubt, you can not only call the New York State, Education Department directly, but you could also contact the New York State School Social Work Association to also get help for this process as well too. So they have a whole website of resources. Same thing like I showed you today, all the guidelines, all the information that's needed, both for the provisional and the permanent certificate. They also have alerts. They set up alerts for the practice guidelines. Again, something really great to check out. If you have any questions about supervision in schools, they're also a really great resource on how to navigate getting your LCSW hours. It's something they've been advocating for as an organization because we know it's really challenging for school social workers to get their LCSW within schools. It is possible. It's just not a guarantee across the board. As I mentioned earlier, not all schools have an LCSW on staff that can provide you with supervision. So that is something you're really interested in, or that you really want to get clinical supervision as your school social worker. There's a couple ways that you could do that. One is that you get your LCSW before you start working in the school system. That's how I got my LCSW. I worked as a clinical school social worker in a child and mental health family mental health, community mental health program under the Office of OMH. So that was guaranteed me getting my LCSW hours. I was guaranteed to get clinical supervision. Another pathway of getting your clinical hours, but also kind of working in the school system. If you're working in New York City, there's a lot of clinics that are opening up mental health clinics in schools that clinical social workers are working in tandem of the school throughout the school day. So they're pulling kids from class, providing, clinical support in the school building in the clinic. So those are like Mount Sinai, New York Foundling, Columbia Presbyterian, Northside Center for Child Development. These are all programs that are actually in school buildings that operate as a mental health clinic. You're going to get supervision. You're going to be able to provide school, students supports in the schools. You're not a school social worker because you're not employed by the school themselves. You're employed by the mental health clinic in the school building, which that's kind of a unique way to get your clinical hours. Or the third way is getting, just as you're going through the interview process, ensuring, and again, it's not always a guarantee, that there is a clinical social worker that is employed that can provide you with clinical supervision. So that's another way. I guess there's a fourth way of doing it, that outside your school social work job, that you do have a fee for service or a part-time clinic position. I know school social workers that are doing that are working, in addition to their school social work job, fee for service or part-time to work on getting their hours in a part-time way. So just kind of want to share that information. So something to sort of think about as you're going in your school social work journey. I got my LCSW before I got into the school system, and that was really advantageous for me. It helped me not only already have my clinical license going into the school, I was able to provide supervision for other school social workers. It also helped me get a leadership role because I was able to provide supervision and training. So, but not a requirement. You don't have to have an LCSW to work in the school system. You will need an LMSW that will be required to have your license, and then having the additional school social work certificate, especially when working in New York City public schools. Another resource to you all, and this is going to be great when you're actually trying to find a job in the school system. So I don't know if anyone has heard of the FABU listserv. This listserv is over 1,000 school social workers strong across the tri-state area. This is a group, a community that is all about supporting school social workers. People are posting jobs, people are posting resources, people are saying, hey, I have questions about my provisional, my required, my permanent certificate. Can anyone, help me out? It is such a supportive community, and it is free to join. To join the FABU listserv, all you need to do is email Emily George. She is a school social worker in New York City. She's also a professor at NYU. She's just an awesome person. And just email her saying, hey, I want to join the FABU listserv. She'll add you. You'll just get emails. Sometimes almost every day. It tends to, definitely, it's a very popular listserv, but it's a great way. People are posting jobs. People are posting questions on resources and information. Is just an incredible community. And people also post, hey, I'm looking for a job in this city, or I'm looking for a job in a school social work job in New York City. Anyone have any leads? So it's just a great way to build community, get resources, ask questions. You can even ask questions about the licensure process, and people are there to help you. So lastly, I did see in the chat too, um, any questions on school social work, just kind of getting jobs, right? So in my journey of getting a job as a school social work, this was back in 2015, especially in New York City schools, right? There's a New York City Department of Education. There is the union. The union has to be available for positions and jobs to be open. That has ebbed and flowed throughout the years. That at that time when I was applying for a school social work job, unfortunately there was a hiring freeze, and there weren't hiring any school social workers at that time. But that was back in 2015. Times have definitely changed. So certainly for New York City Department of Education, you're applying through the application online. Networking is a great way to find openings, to connect. I dropped the FABU listserv, right? That's a great way of networking. Facebook groups are also a great way of networking, and I see jobs posted on there. There are national school social work Facebook groups. There are local Facebook groups. Like, for instance, there is a Long Island school social worker, school counselor Facebook group that has thousands of educators, teachers, school social workers, and people are posting jobs on there as well. So definitely check out Facebook and joining Facebook groups, your alumni Facebook groups. I know Hunter College is super active on their alumni Facebook. People are also sharing jobs. You could also ask, are there any leads on school social work jobs as well? For charter schools specifically, New York has over 160 charter schools across the state, and that's growing. That may be another opportunity to also find a school social work job. That's how I got my school social work job. I applied for a charter school. Charter schools, uh, there's even the New York City charter school organization that we have. You can email them. They also have a list of active charter schools in New York City. You can go to their websites, different charter schools in New York. On their websites, they typically have like apply now, hiring, what jobs are available. Springtime is a great time that schools are looking to hire because they're getting ready to hire for the fall and jobs, they kind of know in the spring who's not coming back, what openings they're going to have. And so spring is a great time to really kind of hit the ground running. I know school social workers that are my colleagues that literally just went into the school building and networked with the principal, said, here's my resume, here's my experience. I'm looking for a job in the school. And I have a colleague of mine that got a job that way in a school in New York City. So it's all about networking, applying for those applications online, utilizing those Facebook groups, utilize FABU. The listserv is fantastic. I highly recommend joining. If you're looking more for the charter school networks, websites, even LinkedIn, a lot of charter school networks have recruiters. So if you look up, let's say like a KIP schools, KIP, HR or KIP recruitment, you can find those folks on LinkedIn and certainly, network through there. So I know it can be challenging to find or get, kind of in, but definitely utilizing your network and utilizing some of these strategies that I share with you today. And again, I did apply through the New York City Department of Education. I was able to get my job in the charter school system. I was able to get interviews through the New York City Department of Education through networking of folks that already had jobs, who knew of a principal who had an opening at their school. Unfortunately, not only did when I went for my interview that time again, there was a hiring freeze and they couldn't hire me as well. So, I feel for that, but just know, I hope some of these things and not to give up. There's many pathways of getting into the school system. So, I know I chatted a lot, but I hope, are there any quick questions in the chat before we close out? Yeah. Maxine, I know it definitely is a challenge. So maybe some of these strategies today, maybe the FABU listserv might be a great option for you to network with some folks. Oh, and then Ellie also said, coming from a different social work practice space, the New York NYU School Certificate Program. So if you are in an adjacent, like say you are in child welfare or you're in clinical practice working with children and youth, you may consider the School Social Work Certificate Program. This will be a great way to get training. You also get CEUs, School Social Work Certificate. Let me drop that in the chat for you all so that you could check out that program. Unfortunately, it's like not free. There is a cost to it. But again, I came from working in the clinical world. I did work with family, youth, and children. I think that was really valuable experience on my resume to help me transition to the school. So I'm going to drop my email in the chat. Feel free to network with me, reach out to me. I'm happy to kind of meet with folks, one-on-one. I'm a resource to you all as you sort of go along in this journey. So I wish you all the best, and let's keep in touch.
Thank you all for being here tonight. Marina, as always, incredible information and resources. This information, the slides, all the upcoming events, everything that we spoke about will be provided in a post-event email. You should receive that along with the recording. We hope you took something out of this and that this was helpful to everyone here. Thank you once again for being here tonight. And make sure you're registered for all of the rest of the events of the series. We have some great stuff lined up for the rest of the week, and we hope to see you there. Thank you all so much. Have a great evening.